Welcome to Viseland. Mikey, what are we talking about today?
We're going to continue our series. And last week we talked about the best players in each draft, the past 10 decades drafts from each draft class and what pick they were, and gave a little perspective on them as prospects. The week before, we ranked the number one picks from the last 10 draft class and talked about them as prospects as well. This time we're going to rank the players from the classes from 2000 to 2009, the draft classes, and talk about them as prospects and kind of give some perspective there. But this time doing a general ranking as well, like we did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so basically it's the best number one picks from 2000 to 2009, and it was an interesting time in the draft too, because this is when we really started to see like that rise of the high school players. But then towards the end of the decade, it becomes one and done, and then there's no high school players. Like it was an interesting, like there's kind of like two different, factors going on there. But yeah, let's start off with our number 10, number one overall pick from 2000 to 2009, and that player that is getting our sad number 10 spot is a. Are you going to say it?
Well, first off, I wanted to mention that I was recently on the Prep to Pro podcast, and for everybody to check that out. Thanks for mentioning that, Jess. But the player that I will rank number 10 is Greg Oden. And this is done with the caveat of the fact that he wasn't actually a terrible player when he was actually playing. However, he only played 105 games. That's the big issue. And the guy who was the pick right after him had a much better career. But yeah, let's talk about Greg Oden as a prospect, because I feel like there's a lot of hindsight in the Kevin Durant, Greg Oden debate that wouldn't have necessarily been the exact same way at the time. So we want to give some Greg Oden context.
He definitely went number one.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, he did go number one for a reason. So he was, in college he was great. He took that Ohio State team to the championship game, with like was it his wrist or his hand?
His left wrist.
Yeah.
Oh no, his shooting hand. Yeah, no, his right wrist.
Yeah.
He had broken his right wrist, so he missed the first little chunk of games. Still ends up being, he shoots like mid-60s from the free throw line, and he still ends up being a first-team All-American.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
And a center, he was getting like almost like 15 and a half a game, almost 10 rebounds, 3 blocks a game.
Yeah. His per 40-minute number is really impressive. And the thing that you neglected to mention was the fact that he like absolutely obliterated Florida in the championship game and was not the reason that they lost that game.
But Florida still, obviously won that
yeah, game. But they have a front court full of guys who go in the top 10, and Greg Oden like completely obliterates them. He, I believe, finished with 25, 12, 4 blocks. Super strong. He was an incredible defensive prospect. When he was in high school, to me, I've never seen a better rim protector prospect. You expected him to kind of like what Rudy Gobert does on the defensive end. That's what you expected from Greg Oden. You just thought he could be that defensive anchor for your team.
Second year with the Blazers, he's getting 2 blocks a game. He's getting 11 points, but 21 games started, 21 games played, and then after that he never basically. He takes like 3 years off before he kind of resurfaces with Miami, but at that point he was just kind of like hanging around, because it was LeBron and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, like he kind of didn't get it. It's just an unfortunate thing, and it's more unfortunate when you pile on the fact that it like Kevin Durant was the next.
Yeah, and the debate clearly was between Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. It's kind of amazing that in the draft combine, Greg Oden measures really well. in the athleticism testing, I think he does better than Kevin Durant in just about everything. He doesn't do the bench press, and Kevin Durant does the bench press and doesn't do a single lift of 185, which was a big story and obviously was completely overblown. Kevin Durant weighs in at 215 at the combine. He's 6'9" without shoes, so he was 6'10" and a quarter with shoes. He had a longer wingspan than Greg Oden. His wingspan was 7'4" and 3/4. Greg's was 7'4" and a quarter. And Kevin Durant's standing reach was 9'2". I thought it was 9'2" and a half. I think he's grown since. Like I think he's just right around 7 feet. But Greg Oden was a massive human being. And the other thing at the time is they both work out for Portland. Kevin Durant comes in and I think shoots the lights out. And I remember Kevin Pritchard saying it was like one of the most impressive workouts he's ever seen. I don't think Greg Oden was any slouch. The work ethic and intel seem to all be pointing in the right direction. As far as the injuries, as much as the medicals, they said they were bad like before the draft. I'm not exactly sure how accurate that was, because it seemed like the biggest thing with Greg Oden was, one, he had one leg longer than the other, and the other thing was the broken wrist. But then when he finally has the issues with his knees and his leg, that is afterwards. That's in summer league, and misses his entire first season. And yeah, the rest is history. But yeah, I think that he would have been much higher on the list if he would have had at least somewhat of a career and played like over 2 seasons. He only plays 105 games.
Yeah,
that's why I give him the last place
on
this list. As we are doing a career projection here, as many of these players are still playing. But yeah, Greg's career is over, and I think a lot of people put the asterisk next to Greg Oden as the last player on this list. He is a friend of the podcast as well, and he
much love.
I think would have been much higher on this list if he had gotten a fair shake, but his body just didn't allow him to, which is forever a tragedy.
Yeah, just an unfortunate situation, but that's the way the ball bounces. But number 9 is also someone who had a very difficult, I guess would be a mild way to put, career. And this guy was also the first high school player to be selected number 1 overall.
He was.
Kwame Brown.
Yeah. And he was an interesting prospect as well. In the RSCI, I actually think he finished number 6 in his class. So it wasn't even necessarily like considered, like the number 1 prospect or anything like that. The word was that they do a workout, and it's he and Tyson Chandler, and they send like a limo for Tyson, and Kwame gets has to take a cab, and he felt like disrespected. And I guess they go up against each other in the workout, and Kwame like waxes him. And Michael Jordan, very impressed with what he saw, just feels like there's a lot to go with. He certainly was a talented player, like legit big man size.
Legit big. Like he was a big dude. I mean, they list him like 6'11", 290.
But like when?
For his career. I don't know what he was at the time of the draft.
Yeah, I don't think he was 290 when he came into the league. But
no, when he came into the league, compared to like Tyson Chandler, who was like super skinny. You had Eddie Curry.
Yeah, I felt Kwame was maybe a max 240 guy when he came in the league. I think he was like 230, but he was certainly bigger than Tyson Chandler. That is correct.
Yeah,
he wasn't as big as Eddie Curry, but yeah, they thought there were ball skills and there was talent there to certainly build on.
Yeah, and this is where Michael Jordan kind of proves himself as like a great talent, but not necessarily always the greatest evaluator of talent. And then Kwame has that unfortunate situation of like he plays with Michael Jordan, which is enough to like demean and break somebody's soul and spirit. Then he goes on, later in his career after he leaves Washington, ends up with Kobe, who also is someone who will crush you and break your spirit.
Yeah, that Kobe Bryant story of Kwame going, "Don't pass me the ball. I'm gonna choke."
Yeah, like
there certainly seem to be issues there, and I think a big thing with teams now, and I don't know if this was as much of the case then. I'm sure they at least tried to, but getting intel on these guys at an early stage was absolutely crucial. And I'm guessing they probably didn't have like the full intel background check on Kwame Brown. He's also known for not necessarily having the biggest hands. And a big thing with Michael Jordan that we're always told is he likes people that can palm the ball. And apparently that was an issue with Kwame. And Kwame just never seems to live up to his potential. If we're talking about who was the better player between he and Greg Oden while they were like at their albeit brief peaks for both of them in the NBA, you go with Greg Oden, but Kwame Brown ends up playing.
It's like 12 years in the league.
Yeah, 607 games.
He
his starts more games than Greg Oden plays by quite a bit, which is the reason why he's higher on the list. And if you were to redraft that, you would have most likely gone with Pau Gasol at the top of the draft.
Yeah, overall, kind of a weaker, and kind of like weird draft.
It was a strange draft, yeah. And at the time, I think it was kind of exciting because these were young big men that we didn't necessarily know tons about, and there probably wasn't a lot of data back then on high school bigs. This was a draft in particular where you have like Kwame go 1, you have Tyson Chandler go 2, get traded for Elton Brand, like that was crazy. To play with the number 4 pick, Eddie Curry, you had Pau Gasol go 3. These were like 4 young big men in a row that went at the top of that draft.
Pau being overseas, it's a lot of like, unknown, especially in the earlier days of a lot of internet-y things, to really like learn. And, for a casual fan to come in and be like, okay, there's 3 high school kids and a foreign, like I've never heard of these players. I remember being excited at the fact that like high school guys were going number 1. Like I thought it was cool. Until it's like with Kwame, it's just like, oh, he's not like Kobe or Kevin Garnett. Like he didn't become.
Yeah, and that's just based on the class too.
Yeah, it's based on the class, but it's just like a little sad. It's just like a little sad because like, LeBron was ready. Kwame, just never really ready. And it'd be interesting to see what it would have been like. Like I don't support the one and done. Like I think the high school kids like have every right. They should be able to go to the league, but like college is interesting because at least it like levels some guys out, that are overhyped, like, lets them kind of really get a better gauge of their play level. Whereas like, it'd be interesting to see like what it would have been like if Kwame had to go to college,
Certainly. Yeah. And, I'd assume he probably ends up doing pretty well when you're in college. It seemed like he was at least like by his 3rd year, like it looked like he was at least kind of like getting towards the right track of at least being a decent role player in the league. But yeah, just never really got there either. And certainly I feel Eddie Curry had a better peak than Kwame Brown. Tyson Chandler ends up being the best of the 3, but he probably took the longest to get going.
It
took Tyson Chandler a while.
Because he didn't really do Chicago until a little like later.
Yeah. And, then he goes to Dallas and he's kind of that defensive anchor that really helps them win that championship in 2011. But, yeah, Pau Gasol certainly, in retrospect, probably the guy that the Wizards should have went with. But, yeah, rest is history. And let's just say it's kind of funny because, we felt like the number 1 picks from 2010 to 2019 were pretty strong on the whole. The 9th player ranked in our 2010 to 2019 was Markelle Fultz, who we feel still has quite a bit of upside. Kwame Brown certainly, I might take Anthony Bennett at the lowest out of anybody.
But then I think
Kwame Brown is pretty
longevity. Kwame and Pau Gasol obviously did cross paths again because the Lakers were able to shift him to Memphis for Pau in that trade.
Yeah, he was part of that trade.
He helped Pau, later in his career and worked out well for the Lakers, worked out well for Memphis. Like that was a trade that, like at the time seemed super lopsided because you're like, oh, like a bunch of garbage guys, including Kwame, to Memphis for Pau. But then it's like, because it was just Marc Gasol's rights. And then Mark, comes in the league and was like an anchor for Memphis for many a year.
Yeah.
So, it was like a trade.
Marc Gasol makes that trade. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he makes it seem way less lopsided than it seemed at the time because Kwame was kind of the anchor. It seemed, at least at the time, the anchor of the trade because to many people, Marc Gasol was still Pau Gasol's fat little brother. And now we look at him in the scrimmages, and he's looking really good deep into his NBA career and has had a fantastic career as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Many great years in Memphis.
It's one of those trades that it took it a few years to marinate for Memphis, but it worked out, for both teams because the Lakers got that immediate impact. Memphis got, a franchisee guy and Mark, but let's move on to our number 8 player. And this was
and this is like, another guy who didn't necessarily spend tons of time in the NBA, but we felt during his years there, he at least looked more promising as a complementary piece than Kwame Brown. Had at least some promise, but never was a great NBA player and clearly should not have gone where he did in the NBA draft. Andrea Bargnani, who was the first pick by the Toronto Raptors in the 2006 draft. Let's talk about this 2006 draft, so as Jason was talking about, there were a number of years. The year before the highest high school player had gone, I believe 6, it was Martell Webster. But you had Dwight Howard go in 2004, and 2004 had a bunch of really good high school players go quite high. I believe like 8 in the first round. And then 2003, you have LeBron James. It seemed like there were a nice run of high school players that were pretty impactful. And then the NBA institutes what's now known as the one and done rule, where you have to have at least a year of post-grad under your belt before you're eligible for the draft. And, the cutoff age is you turning like 19 that year. So yeah, that year definitely, first off, the high school class was anything amazing. So that hurt in itself. The 2005 high school class had just finished their freshman year, and there weren't tons of people there that were necessarily screaming top of the draft for you. And then they don't so the Raptors, of course, it's the first time in franchise history they have the number 1 pick in the draft, and you don't get a chance at Greg Oden or Kevin Durant. It almost certainly would have been Greg Oden. As we mentioned earlier, many people back then higher on Greg Oden than Kevin Durant. Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Raptors have a bit of a decision, and their general manager, Brian Colangelo, just seemed to love this guy who played in Italy. And it certainly seemed like he was going to be one of the top few players in the draft. The other choice I think they were really seriously considering was LaMarcus Aldridge, who ended up going to Chicago, getting traded to Portland, who chose Tyrese Thomas at 4. It was that kind of swap. So yeah, I think the connection there was LaMarcus played at Texas. Chris Bosh is from Texas. They had trained together, and obviously there wasn't a huge divide between the top of the draft. So there were a number of players that were being talked about as the possible first pick. I think even Tyrese Thomas was probably in.
Tyrese Thomas had that potential card, and then you look at the college stars of that year, like the 2 college guys that were, National Player of the Year was Adam Morrison and JJ Redick. Like JJ Redick was like a top player due to
Let's just say JJ Redick not being talked about as the number 1 pick.
No,
Adam Morrison certainly being talked about as a high pick, probably not number 1. But yeah, Adam Morrison goes number 3, obviously. And I'll be honest with you, I loved Adam Morrison. I thought Adam Morrison was going to be a stud. I loved the way that he made tough shots. The problem was every single shot he took was a tough shot. So that was probably something I should have noticed back then, and certainly a reason for his lack of success at the NBA level. But yeah, it seemed like let's be honest, like Andrea Bargnani, his rookie year, very intriguing. Like he has a really solid season. Dirk Nowitzki even after they played the Mavericks, he's like, oh man, this guy was like way further ahead of me at the same age. And Jason and I actually had a chance to go to a game during Andrea Bargnani's rookie year in Portland. And he's playing Brandon Roy, who ends up winning the Rookie of the Year. Should have been unanimously. Thank you, Chuck Swirsky, for voting for Andrea. He really deserved it. I'm being sarcastic. Brandon Roy was clearly Rookie of the Year that season. But it was funny because in that game, it goes to overtime. And it was still when I was kind of like in the strange phase of feeling, I was living in Portland, but I was kind of feeling some ties to Toronto. So I think I was kind of rooting for the Raptors. And Brandon Roy hits a shot to put the Blazers up 99-98 in overtime. Andrea Bargnani nails the game winner.
Yeah.
And the thing they said about Andrea Bargnani as well was that I guess there was some test to see how, like, it kind of was used to measure like clutch ability and like basically your nerves during pressure situations. And Andrea like passes that with flying colors because he just doesn't care. So like that was seen as a good thing. I think it eventually became a bad thing.
Yeah. Because
he didn't care. I think that was kind of his mood. And he may be one of the worst rebounding 7-footers in the NBA.
Yeah, that's why like his career high in rebounds came in 2009, 2010. So like 4 years in the league, 6.3. Goes downhill from there. He gets he likes shooting the ball. He likes scoring. I mean, the next year he gets 21 again.
He was a really good shooter. That was like the major thing with him. He shot the three really well.
And now the league's like
probably would take way more now.
And that was earlier, like an early adapter in that, because now the league's shifting to a lot of these big guys do it. So it's like
he was an absolute stretch big.
Yeah.
You just kind of hope there would be a little bit more, and then he would eventually pick it up on the defensive end as well.
Just a little bit. That's all you like. Yeah, you just want like a block a game, which he struggled to do for many seasons.
Yeah. Defense, rebounding were not his specialty at all. And you can see that just in his advanced numbers and just in his effort. He absolutely left you wanting more. There were seasons where he looked like he was about to make the turn to be at least a decent complementary piece. But I think certainly I believe there were some injuries involved there as well, which were the reasons why he eventually left the league.
Last 2 years were all cut pretty short after, especially after he leaves Toronto. He really never plays more than 40 some odd games.
Yeah, but it was a disappointing pick, and he has a better rookie season than LaMarcus Aldridge, who was suffering from injuries that year as well. There were questions about him also coming into the NBA, and as we said in an earlier episode, like he plays Tyrese Thomas in the NCAA tournament, gets kind of waxed by him, and people were wondering how tough he was. I think he eventually makes the turn and then has some fantastic seasons with Portland and San Antonio, and clearly has had a much better career than Andrea. And then the other guy that you can argue being one of the best players in that draft is Kyle Lowry, who nobody was really talking about being the first pick in the draft. So it was really between, I think, LaMarcus and Andrea. And
but there was no one was saying definitively like picking a side. Like it was kind of like who are they actually?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a little surprising that Andrea went one, but it wasn't necessarily like, oh wow, like we're definitely taking LaMarcus Aldridge, and then they end up taking.
They flip the switch, this was a very toss up draft, and
you wondered what was happening.
Yeah,
for sure.
Overall, like a so like
Leroy, of course, the like looking like the guy who absolutely should have been the first pick in the draft over his first few years. But even at the time, I think people knew there were injury concerns and concerns with the knee and the possible future bone on bone. We've talked about this before, but with Andrea, it certainly looks like it. His first couple years, there's some positives, but yeah, we have him 8th on this list. He was at best a complimentary piece on a bad team. It gets a little bit better from here.
We kind of have hit this point, and then it gets like to this next little tier, and then it's going to eventually get into the superstardom.
Yeah.
But yeah, who is up next? Who do we have? Number 7.
Number 7. You could definitely argue between the next couple players, I feel, but the guy that I have number 7 is Kenyon Martin. I was going back and forth between he and the next player, but he had a really solid career. He's a one-time All-Star, a great defender. Nice. Coming out of college, I think it was completely obvious he was going to be the first pick in the draft. He breaks his foot during his senior season at Cincinnati. And so that was definitely a bit of a downer, and people wondered, how much time he'd miss in his first season, but it certainly seemed like there was really no question that he was the first pick in that draft. He was the best player in college basketball that year. Cincinnati looked like they would possibly be like one of the favorites to win the NCAA championship, and then he gets hurt.
With Kenyon getting hurt too.
Oh, I think once Kenyon got hurt, they were the second seed, but yeah, it hurt their chances of winning the championship, and they lose in, I believe, the second round. But yeah, Kenyon was, I felt, far and away the best player in college basketball. I don't think there was any real question of who the number 1 pick was between, you have Kenyon go number 1, then you had Stromile Swift 2, Darius Miles 3, and Marcus Fizer 4.
It's a pretty atrocious draft when you look at it.
Yes. Oh God. And Mike Miller 5. Mike Miller ends up winning Rookie of the Year. It's a really bad draft. Like, yeah, it goes down in history as one of the worst.
Yeah.
It's just not a lot of depth going on. The best players you get out of it are like, kind of lower level all-stars. If you were to do a redraft, you probably would have Michael Redd go 1. I know there are a few guys you kind of put in there, like, obviously Jamal Crawford's had the longest career out of anybody in it. Mike Miller, really solid player.
Yeah, still stays.
A lot of disappointment, and a lot of guys not necessarily living up to their ceiling outcome. Kenyon was seen as this fantastic defensive prospect. I think he was among the nation's leaders in blocked shots. He had a solid junior season, but then he really takes a star turn during his senior year, kind of out of this world athleticism. But it's seen as more like a smaller center than even as a power forward. And he eventually plays the 4 in the league for many years. Is he ever like a star player? Certainly has some great moments on New Jersey and with Denver. But
he was making the finals during this run with Jason, led by Jason Kidd. But Kenyon Martin was a good piece.
And having some outstanding finals games, I remember.
Yeah,
he looked really good against the Lakers a few times.
And he was
when they were getting waxed.
He's a frustrating opposing player too. He was he had a lot of toughness, and that brought a lot to his kind of persona in the league.
And a really great all around defender, and I think almost ideal, kind of smaller center if you were to play small ball now. But yeah, is he necessarily living up to his best outcome? I would say no.
No.
I certainly think, you would have hoped he would have reached maybe a bit of a higher peak. And I never felt like he was the star that, you really expected out of the number 1 pick, but he certainly, considering the draft, was a fine number 1 pick, especially when you look at the 3 guys that go immediately after him.
Yeah, it's
but he, I have him 7th on the list because I feel like while the other player didn't necessarily have the highest peak, he brought a few other things that I felt make him a little bit better, and maybe maybe a tad better of a career than Kenyon Martin. And I guess we can move on to the next player.
Let's keep it moving. This was
And yeah, so at 6 I have Andrew Bogut.
Yeah.
And Andrew Bogut was the number 1 pick in the 2005 draft by Milwaukee. Doesn't necessarily come out of the gates like looking like this incredible pick. And certainly you would hope the Bucks screwed this one up. Like, let's be straight.
You look at I mean, Marvin Williams obviously never attained greatness either, the number 2 pick.
No, you'd definitely rather have Bogut than him.
Yeah, but then you got like Darren Williams, Chris Paul. Like, boom, boom.
Yeah. I think either of them had better careers than Andrew Bogut, especially Chris Paul.
But overall,
Chris Paul, it was surprising how people kind of felt about Chris Paul, because to me, he always looked like the guy who was just like the best basketball player in that draft.
Yeah.
And you kind of wondered why teams weren't higher on him. Especially like, it's still kind of crazy to me that Utah took Darren Williams over Chris Paul. I know Darren Williams was bigger, and then for the first part of their career, Darren Williams would once in a while get the better of Chris Paul. Like, I know the individual matchup there, but you just look at like the body of Chris Paul's work, what he's able to do with an offense, his ability on the defensive end, his shooting. Like, the guy is a master basketball player and absolutely should have been the first pick in this draft. He was also a sophomore in college, and so was Andrew Bogut. And I think Andrew Bogut had like a decent freshman year at Utah, and then he's pretty good. And then his sophomore season, he steps it up a huge notch. Great passer, does like a lot of the dirty work as a big man. Like, he's a fantastic screen setter, albeit many of them illegal. And, so he's great in the pick and roll. And also, like, great passer and very, like, strong defensive presence. And I think that's what he's really known as, like, the ability to rim protect. He never wins Defensive Player of the Year, and he's never an all-star. So, Kenyon Martin has that over him. But in 2009, 2010, he makes the All-NBA third team. In 2014-15, he's all-defensive second team. But I feel like there were a few years when the Warriors were, like, had that great squad where he was seen as being not necessarily Draymond Green on defense, but like certainly playing a huge part in their success there.
And that's why teams still talk to him. Like, he was like, that's why he came, his last run with Golden State, it was like he played in Australia for the year and they just brought him in for like the playoffs, basically, the end of the season playoffs.
Yeah.
Big guy, but he never like achieved, what you want from the number 1 pick.
Yeah. For sure. And he leads the league in block shots per game during his time in Milwaukee in the 2010-11 season. The thing that he was great at is like blocking shots without even leaving the floor. Like, he was just really great at positioning. He had durability issues too. I think you could even say that with Kenyon Martin. Like, there were some seasons.
Definitely. Like, there's not a lot of full seasons.
Struggled with that.
Bogut only has his rookie year.
Plays 706 career games, starts almost all of them. And still a guy gaining NBA interest. One thing I will say about Andrew Bogut, my friend Corbin A. Smith has a great story on him. And if you want to read into Andrew Bogut and some of the stuff that he believes, it's like completely out of this world.
Yeah, he's
so look, I forget the name of the article, but look up Andrew Bogut, Corbin Smith, and you'll find it. He has some strange things that he believes in, and stuff that I don't think many players would be down with.
Which is crazy that you go into a locker room feeling the way he does, but it's like, more power to him.
But he went back to Australia and certainly has been great there. I know he was really upset with how the Australian League season ended. Let's just stop talking about Andrew Bogut. We're done with him.
He never comes back to the NBA, but
we're good.
We're good. So
Andrew Bogut's had his career. Long live Chris Paul, and he almost Milwaukee. I know Milwaukee likely needed a center during that draft, but I think they needed everything.
Yeah, no, I think usually you have the number one pick because you need everything.
Yeah, well, not necessarily.
No, I know, but like a lot of the time. So like go with Chris Paul, even Darren Williams.
Obviously, like you make draft tiers because you never want to take a guy who you feel projects like significantly better than somebody else. I'm guessing they must have had them on the same tier, but it just turned out that they were not right. And yeah, I know hindsight there is 2020 as well, but yeah, Chris Paul has had a tremendous NBA career. Number 5, we're moving up a tier.
Yeah, this
certainly moving up a tier.
Forget that. Now we're on to the next.
Yeah, we're on to the really good ones. And the reason I have this player number 5 is, again, due to injuries. I think that's a pretty common theme, and the number 1 player who I think, if you follow basketball, you almost certainly know, has been incredible with durability. Everybody else has faced at least some injuries or kind of things that led to their downturn in their career. But yeah, the number 5 player was absolutely fantastic, took the league by storm, is an all-star every single year he plays in the NBA, largely because he is an absolute national icon of China, and that's Yao Ming.
Yeah.
Yao Ming is he was seen as like an absolute phenomenon because he's 7'6", incredibly skilled,
super skilled,
and so his father was a center for the Chinese national basketball team. His mother was a center for the Chinese national basketball team, and he plays really, really well in the CBA. With Chinese players, you never necessarily know their age. Like, that seems to be kind of an ongoing trend. I at least think Yao is somewhere around his age. There's like no real need to lie about Yao Ming's age because he was the real deal. And he
he was never like but yeah, it's one of those foreign things. And like, I know a lot of people talk about some of the, like, I've heard things about the CBA too, that, you know, guys don't always play at 100% as well. There's a lot of people like walking up the court sometimes and things like that. I remember reading.
Oh, it's a very different league. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, again, like a lot of things like pacing and things like that. But Yao Ming was one of those guys you'd heard about a lot before the draft, like that name, but you didn't really.
For sure.
Again, it was in earlier days of the internet, like no YouTube. So it's like, you can't really watch any tape on him, you know, as a casual fan. But I just remember seeing this, like, you know, in the small little window on my browser, this little ESPN, you know, thing. And Yao Ming had he had a workout in the US, and he went against a former Oregon Duck.
Christopherson. Yeah.
And it was just like, that was like the first time, like, really getting.
Showed Christopherson blocking his shot, and then like Yao Ming just generally working him.
Yeah, then that just like.
No surprise. Christopherson was like the one guy they could find who was even like close to big enough.
Yeah, because he was a 7'2" from Denmark, but like, yeah, that was the first time seeing him.
Yao Ming still dwarfed.
Yeah, you see the skill set, because like, I don't know what you'd call them, but the kind of like the guys over a certain height, you know, like 7'3", 7'4", you know, to have that skill set at that time, like nobody, like maybe Ralph Sampson at 7'4" was kind of a skilled, you know, really, really big man. But Yao was kind of the first, because now even like, I mean, in scrimmages, like Boban hits threes now, like, or at least takes them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was just a great, tough player, and really like that last couple playoff runs that he had, like he was putting up some really impressive games, but his body just couldn't hold up.
Yeah. And
that's the worst part on him. It's just like, he was playing some great basketball.
Oh man, he had really like looked like one of the better centers in the NBA, if not the best. And he during his rookie season, I think Charles Barkley had made some bet that he'd kiss like a donkey's ass, an ass's ass, if Yao Ming scored 20 points during his rookie season. He takes 7 games. So his first 7 games, he finally gets into double digits during that 7th game. They play the Lakers, I believe, on TNT, and Yao Ming scores 20 points. And Charles Barkley lost the bet, and go YouTube it. It's there.
And then the thing too is like in this draft, I mean, he is the guy you go with number one as well. Like still like
No, well, you can't hate on the pick just because of his peak. You go with Amari Stoudemire just because he had the longer career.
but at the top, but I'm saying,
I think he was, if not like as high as Yao Ming is peak, like he was right there. He had a number of seasons where he was.
no, Amari had some great season, and Amari's still playing in Israel.
Yeah.
So he's still going, but like
Yeah. Obviously, like with the foot, but it's you could have a debate between the two of them.
Yeah, but given at the time though, it's like Jay Williams goes number 2. Obviously, that career.
Jay Williams, I wanted to bring up, had a really great college career, and like if he would have left, I think the year before, certainly would have been in conversation for being the first pick in the draft that year, as would have Yao Ming.
And a lot of people like Mike Dunleavy.
Yeah.
At the time for various reasons that are unknown to mankind at this time.
I certainly felt like the only two, like the two most legit guys at the top of the draft were Yao Ming and
Jay Williams. Well, Jay Williams was the best player in college. Like, and so we'd seen him a lot. He was the star player on Duke.
Yeah.
That's
won the championship that year before.
Yeah. Like that gets you a lot. But yeah, like overall, like an interesting draft, because it's like, that was kind of the toss-up. Then you got like Mike Dunleavy, Drew Gooden, Skidishvili, DeJuan Wagner. Oh yeah, overall like so draft. Mario a little later, Karan, Butler.
I'm a little surprised Yao never made All-NBA first team. He made the second team twice, third team 3 times. But yeah, he got way better also as a defender. Like his mobility was always a bit of an issue, and like if you played a faster paced game, like you could take him off the floor. But yeah, he becomes a really solid defender, like crazy offensive player. Like, of course, who's blocking his shot? It's just not happening.
He kind of had a high release for a big for at his height,
and amazing touch.
Yeah,
and at the free throw line, he's like mid 80s.
Yeah, no, high percentage. No, his biggest thing too that he'll always is like it's just his cultural impact on the game globally is like is so huge. I mean, he helped even his own teammates. Like for a while, Shane Battier had like one of the most popular.
Oh man, yeah, like I think the Rockets franchise in general.
Yeah, was like so popular. So it's cool to see his legacy and everything. But yeah, it's just one of those again like cut too short, but like he still had a pretty good run, but of course it would have been great to see him get a little bit more.
Yeah, he was excellent, and I miss him all the time. I like he's one of the players who I just love to watch. It was a great ride watching Yao Ming play basketball. A documentary I highly recommend is The Year of Yao, and it delves into his rookie year. It focuses on he and his translator. It kind of goes into basketball in China in general as well. Really well done documentary.
Yeah.
The stuff Yao Ming's done off of the basketball court is absolutely excellent. And
it's a great doc because his translator doesn't really know basketball. Yao doesn't really know English, so they're kind of both trying to learn a language of some kind. Yeah, it's a great.
And then when he walked out with the torch in the Beijing Olympics, like with that little kid who had saved all his classmates during that earthquake, like I had tears in my eyes. Man.
No, he's a great dude, and like
an absolute ambassador.
Yeah, wish he had a better shot at the.
Oh man, yeah. But
I still think
injuries are the only reason he's 5.
Yeah.
Like he could have been higher on the list.
I still think
certainly like a Hall of Fame player because of
he's already in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame.
And the guy I have 4, I'm still, I don't feel is likely to make the Hall of Fame, but definitely a chance. But yeah, the reason I have him 4 is I believe he's already played more games than Yao Ming. He had a really high peak as well. Probably not as long as Yao Ming's peak, but certainly it's hard to take away the fact that Derrick Rose has an MVP to his name.
He's got that MVP, and he was like Chicago was a great team because of Derrick Rose.
Yeah,
MVP.
yeah, yeah.
You know, like
For many years.
really, yeah, he was really just.
And you can argue, and we have argued whether he deserved the MVP that year. Many feel that a couple players that are ahead of him on the list might have deserved it more. I think in hindsight, you definitely make that case. But yeah, let's talk about Derrick Rose as a prospect.
Oh,
He was electrifying.
Yeah, amazing.
He was explosive. He had a tremendous freshman year.
If that Memphis team knew how to make free throws, they would have been champions.
That was a big thing. That was the thing.
They had it. They were such a deep team, especially like it's such a Calipari thing too, because like for not being like in a power conference to be like that deep. Obviously, somebody.
Yeah. And Derrick wasn't necessarily like the best shooter. He wasn't necessarily the best passer, but he was so quick with the ball, so explosive, finishing around the basket, like super creative. He was the guy that you built that team around. It was, I believe, that was the season where it was the first time in NCAA history where 4 number ones made the Final Four.
Yeah.
And they play UCLA, who was when you were talking about your bracket and talking about a deep team, they were my choice to win the NCAA tournament that year. They had Kevin Love, Russell Westbrook, Darren Collison. Russell Westbrook ends up having a good game. I think Kevin Love plays all right. Darren Collison, who was the quote-unquote point guard of the team, gets obliterated by Derrick Rose. And Darren Collison is held to a donut. Derrick Rose has a great game. Memphis beats UCLA to play Kansas in the finals. As Jason mentioned earlier, the free throw shooting at the end of that game keeps Kansas in the game. They make some big shots and come back and end up winning in overtime.
Yeah, if you're a kid,
great NCAA final.
I watched that game recently. It was on during, when the tournament should have been on this year. And it's like, yeah, if you're a kid watching that game, like the next thing you do is go out and practice your free throws because you're like, that was a championship sealed up. But yeah, like in this draft, it was a pretty strong.
It was a really strong draft. Yeah, it's like, and a lot of guys may not have hit their like ultimate ceiling, but many of them had long, like really solid careers, and
or big names. Or
there were a few that did for sure.
And some of them that didn't pan out, but like Beasley and Mayo, like had big names at the time.
Yeah, and even they were like well ahead of the curve, like as rookies and like.
Yeah, Mayo. I mean, OJ Mayo was talked about since he was like born as being this.
For sure.
This guy, like.
The number one pick discussion was between Rose and Beasley.
Yeah, totally. And I always thought Rose had the edge.
I agree. Yeah, I was team Derrick Rose. I just thought coming out of high school, I never really had seen a point guard with his level of like quickness and like burst, athleticism, creativity. He looked like a guy who could eventually, like after a few years, end up being the best point guard in the league. And this was after Chris Paul had been in the league for a number of years and already looked like he could have that title for many years. Derrick Rose, in his 3rd season, wins NBA MVP. Michael Beasley, in his lone season at Kansas State, goes and plays for Bob Huggins. And this was after Kevin Durant had this enormous freshman year in the Big 12. And Michael Beasley has just as big, if not bigger, of a freshman season. You can definitely – I think the projection wasn't necessarily the same as a guy like Kevin Durant, who was longer and had like even more ball skills and definitely a better defensive projection to the NBA. But yeah, Michael Beasley, incredibly talented. OJ Mayo is a great player in that draft as well. The 4th pick is this guy who ends up being the best player in the draft, Russell Westbrook.
Coming off the little raw, at UCLA.
Oh yeah. And he wasn't even necessarily considered the 4th pick in the draft. Like that it was kind of a surprise he went as high as he did.
He was super athletic. Had a lot of tap things, and obviously Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
And then 5 is someone that we had Michael and I have had the experience of watching basically since his freshman year in high school.
Yeah.
And is still, I'll say, the greatest high school player I have seen in person, Kevin Love.
Yeah, like as a player, he was out of this world. And obviously it looked like he was going to be an NBA player. And I'd say if he didn't hit like the top of his projection, he certainly was close and has had a fantastic career as well. Yeah, just in terms of Derrick Rose, the injuries definitely keep him lower on the list and are the reason why he doesn't have this high peak. And there certainly could be other factors into him not necessarily being a lock for the Hall of Fame. Has a very solid year this year and has had some great moments.
A new chapter on his career, kind of taking it.
Yeah.
And he still has some games where he shows those flashes. It's just unfortunately he's never going to reach that high ceiling again. That's passed him by.
He's like good player on a bad team at this point. Yeah. And like, you know, he goes to Cleveland for like that little while and doesn't seem to work out. But yeah, he's certainly like, he's had a good career. The injury after, like when he's really young into his career, he never reaches the peak that you saw him possibly maintaining for a number of years going forward. Misses like a full season and is never really the same. Has had stints with New York, Minnesota, that Cleveland one that I mentioned, and then Detroit.
Yeah, he's probably got a couple years, but yeah, it's like, is he going to ever be a role player on a good team? Like, obviously, that
it'll be about situation, but probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Like, he'll probably just be a good player on bad teams.
The shooting and at this point, he doesn't necessarily have that same burst that he had. That, you know, where you considered him that special prospect, and he's not. He never was the highest level of shooter to begin with. Certainly got better, but yeah, he. We have him for begrudgingly over Yao Ming. And the one guy who I think I was kind of looking at, and this is a good lead into our next player who we have at number 3. I was thinking about if Blake Griffin had entered the 2008 draft and where he would have gone.
Which he you know, like he was really.
Oh, absolutely.
He had that in him to be like, the minute you see. So Blake Griffin, our number 3, 2009 first pick. He just had the body. You looked at him, you're like, this guy's a tank.
Yeah, and athleticism that was
this off the charts. Yeah.
Like, are you taking Joe Alexander at 8 in the 2008 draft over Blake Griffin? Hell no! Like that to me, that's Blake Griffin's low point.
No, totally.
So yeah, I think he absolutely would have been I'm thinking he might have even gone because if you're looking back then, and obviously hindsight being 2020 and everything, if you're looking back then, do you take Russell Westbrook over Blake Griffin? I think that's at least a discussion. Like, Sam Presti may have loved Russell Westbrook and maybe saw that fit being even better. But Blake Griffin coming out of Oklahoma, I remember like Oklahoma City, you know, had the 3rd pick in the 2009 draft, and everybody was talking about, oh, it would have been amazing if they would have gotten the number 1 pick and taken Blake Griffin. So I feel like if Blake Griffin were to have been in the draft the year before, he goes in the top half of the lottery. Like at least I think like 6, 7, 8. I could have seen him going as high as 4 or 5. But yeah, he comes back to college for his sophomore year, plays with his brother Taylor at Oklahoma, and is considered, bar none, the number 1 player in the draft.
Yeah.
And seen as like, you know, this explosive power forward. He has ball skills. The shooting wasn't necessarily something that looked like it was going to be a factor for him. But the thing with Blake Griffin is he gets better year after year. Like, so the intel and the work we're all seeing is big factors with him as well.
And that wasn't as big a requirement at the time when he got drafted as it is now. And so he's improved his shooting, like as the game is needed, you know, more people to spread and be able to shoot. And he was one of the core guys on this, like basically the first time ever, at least I'll say in our lifetime, that the Clippers were like a team that was respectable. They built this kind of like Lob City persona based around Blake Griffin. I remember I had a friend who went to, just the Clippers preseason game when Blake was finally able to play, and was just like, he was just telling me like how hard he was dunking
Oh man.
during the game.
But
Like,
yeah, I think he wins the McDonald's All-American dunk contest as well. Like the guy was a crazy athlete, and he worked a lot on his body. Like coming out of high school, he and Kevin Love weren't necessarily like ripped, and Blake works on his body, and like his pre-draft process and everything was working really, really hard when I don't even think he needed to, because he would have been like Blake Griffin could have been a guy that coasted through workouts and probably still would have gone number one, but he just really wanted to prepare for his NBA career. And he, he unfortunately breaks his foot and sits out his entire rookie year.
but
then,
that doesn't like hinder him very much in the.
No, he wins rookie of the year when he's like officially a rookie that next year. Was already like, did he make the All-Star team his rookie year?
Let me double check. I know he made it pretty.
No. Oh yeah, he did. He did. Yeah. So yeah, immediately makes the All-Star team. Is an All-Star his first 5 seasons in the league, and then slowly, I think mainly due to injury, he misses the next few All-Star games. Makes the All-Star game in 2018-19 with Detroit, so he's been 6-time All-Star. Has had some fantastic years.
Yeah.
I know
improved a lot. Like again, like his shooting was kind of a very weak point, but he made that something that he's okay at now.
For sure. Like I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, no, he's
and a good passer. You've never seen as like the best defender, but I think at least like passable on that end of the floor as well. And in 2013-14, he is third in MVP voting. And I think at his high point, likely like near the top 10 players in the league. Never has made an All-NBA first team, but made the second team 3 years in a row, third team 2 years. He's certainly has had a really good career. Could he have possibly been a little bit higher end? Maybe. I think mainly due to injury and like durability, he likely would have been better if he could have stayed a bit healthier. The guys that went after him who have looked better than Blake Griffin, and like Blake Griffin is a guy, we're at a point here where you're really happy with him as your first pick. But then the guy that you take in hindsight, Stephen Curry.
Yeah, or James Harden.
Well, come on, man. Let's be real.
But Steph Curry never, like, especially as a prospect, like, didn't pass the eye test. Like, people didn't think.
Well, that's what I'm saying in hindsight. We're not talking about, like, we're talking about careers here. Yeah. Stephen Curry has had the amazing career because you can build a championship around Stephen Curry.
But when I think about Blake Griffin, I think about that video of him at USA Basketball, where he's doing all these dunks, and then all the guys like at the little like
D'Angelo Russell, yeah,
like D'Angelo Russell.
He didn't even stretch though.
Like Devin Booker, and just like this future generation that he's playing with now. But these guys were like children at the time. Were just like in awe of what he could do.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah,
but yeah, as far as career-wise, like we have shouted the praises of James Harden, and he certainly is going down as one of the best players in NBA history. You rank Stephen Curry ahead of him just because the rings and the fact that he's not a system player. You build the system around him.
Yeah, totally.
Makes you a championship team. Like that's straight up. Anybody that calls Stephen Curry a system player, they're missing the point. And yes, obviously he's had some amazing players to work with and play with, but he makes it go.
Yeah, but sometimes those players become great because they're playing with this guy. It's like, so you never know if they were all on their own and not with Stephen Curry. So it's hard to say, but yeah, no, Steph is like the most just like it's hard to explain him to like in a conventional sense because he's just shooting from everywhere.
Yeah, but
it's fine.
I went back and looked at my old draft board from the 2009 draft. I just did like a little one on NBA Draft.net message board. This was before I was with the site. And I had Blake Griffin number 1. That was like duh. I had Brandon Jennings number 2. Not necessarily the best one there, but I had Harden 3, and I had Steph Curry 5. Okay. I was happy about that one. I was in on Steph Curry. Should have been even more in on Steph Curry, but I was absolutely surprised when I think I probably had Rubio 4. I was surprised when Minnesota didn't use one of their picks on him. But yeah, he wasn't necessarily a guy who was going to go like in the top 5, but 6 and then ends up going 7. Yeah. Harden like was seen as the likely 3rd pick in the draft. You weren't sure with Hasheem Thabeet like if he was going as high as 2. Many people thought Ricky Rubio was the best player after Blake Griffin in that draft if you were going to go back to the time, due to his EuroLeague success and the fact that, you know, he looked amazing at youth levels, was a great defender and like this incredibly creative passer as well. Thabeet had a good college season, seen as a really good rim protector prospect, but then like Marc Gasol had just had a really strong rookie year. You weren't playing them together. Like, no, totally. I did not get that pick. And yeah, as soon as it went down, I was like, I don't know about this one. And it turns out was right on there. And then the Thunder take James Harden 3, and it was the second year in a row they had taken a guy who wasn't necessarily projected there, who ends up going on to be if James Harden isn't the best player in that draft class, he's certainly after Stephen Curry. Yeah, like they're both like an MVP level guy and like in the conversation for the last number of years. But yeah, he great pick. But Blake Griffin, number of good years on the Clippers. They never make it past that certain level, but it's hard to fault that pick. And he was. Let's provide historical context. Blake Griffin was going number 1, and for a guy who you knew was going number 1, you're happy with what
you're happy with Blake Griffin. No, totally.
Yeah, and I honestly I kind of wondered where to rank Blake Griffin between the next player that we have, and then as we see at number 1, there will be a gap that is like pretty much would take up the entire country, if not the world. Between that tier, but the guy that we have at number 2 was the first pick in 2004 draft, and I'm not sure he was considered the no-brainer number 1 pick that he likely should have been in this draft, but he was the right choice. And I think there were, I don't know, just my mind in like going back to that time, which I have a pretty good memory. I think there was at least a question between he and Emeka Okafor.
There definitely was. Emeka Okafor was the
Orlando.
And UConn to a championship, big defensive player in college. Yeah. And Ben Gordon had that ability to score a lot.
I don't think he was in the conversation, though.
Not from number 1.
That was the thing. I'm talking about number 1 here, Jason.
I bet. But the guy that ended up number 1 was, again, out of high school.
Yeah.
This class was kind of like as the second, was it the second or third to last high school draft? But it was like a high school.
It was the second to last.
Yeah.
Because that next year was Martell.
Yeah. It's like an explosion because you have like Sean Livingston goes high. You have Robert Swift, Sebastian Telfair.
Robert Swift.
J.R. Smith.
Al Jeff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to say
it was a good class. It was a good class. Dwight Howard actually played AAU basketball with Josh Smith. They had this like huge starting line on the Atlanta Celtics team. It was Dwight Howard, Josh Smith, and then the guy I think played center for them technically, even though Dwight definitely is center. I think people kind of felt Dwight might even be a power forward at this time. Like that's how far the game's come around.
Yeah.
And so it was probably like the dream for Dwight and Josh Smith because they don't have to play a big man position necessarily. So Dwight is playing the 4. Josh Smith's playing the 3s he always wanted to do. And then you had Randolph Morris, who ends up going to Kentucky and goes undrafted, I believe. I think he goes undrafted and is allowed to go back to school.
Yeah, he was allowed to go back. Like, he had like a waiver. Yeah. It was like a thing. But then I like obviously.
Yeah, which I think is awesome. But
totally, but yeah, that's another episode about how.
So they were enormous. Randolph Morris was like a 7-footer. And Dwight is like, I guess like 6'9" without shoes, but has this like enormous wingspan, this incredible frame, and this crazy athleticism.
Like he just big, like he was gonna be a big dude. Like he was skinnier at the time, but he ends up becoming like this super big, strong interior player in the league. And really anchors this Orlando team that is pretty whatever and is able to, even take them to a finals.
Yeah. Well, and Orlando signs Rashard Lewis, and Hito Turkoglu certainly was a great player for them. What about Jamir Nelson?
Yeah, Jamir Nelson makes an all-star team during that run.
Yeah. I'm just trying to look up and see if we have.
But yes.
Oh, yeah. So Dwight, 6'9" without shoes, 9'3.5" standing reach, 7'4.5" wingspan, and 240 pounds already, coming into the league. So already quite a beast.
That's a big dude. But like Emeka Okafor.
Emek's like very similar size-wise. He's almost 260, 9'2.5" standing reach, 7'4" wingspan, 6'8" 3/4 without shoes. So they're both like undersized. No, they're fine. They were fine size centers.
Yeah.
But
wasn't a 7
probably back then maybe like undersized, but they certainly had size for the position.
But Okafor never had the offensive game. He was more of like a defensive kind of guy. Dwight had.
Let's also be real. Dwight not necessarily known as having the best offensive game, but more upside than Emeka Okafor.
Upside, and so you can draft based on that. Whereas
a much better athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are things you could translate and turn into something special.
Yeah. So Dwight immediately plays big minutes in the NBA, averages 12 and 10 as a rookie. I believe Emeka still wins Rookie of the Year. But yeah, Dwight from then on, much better career. He takes a pretty big jump, like almost immediately. By his 3rd year in the league, he's an all-star. His beginning of his career, like really, really durable. Like only misses like a few games, like plays 82 games for his first 4 seasons, then 79 games, 82, 78. And then that next year, after probably his best NBA season in 2010-11, he plays only 54 games. And then, he's had injuries here and there.
And I think that next season, once he goes to the Lakers, that's kind of the beginning of the downward.
Yeah, definitely. That's you felt like Dwight going to the Lakers would be going to like that possibly like situation because Orlando had kind of stagnated. You thought he was going to a better situation to win, and then at one point they have like this team with like Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard.
Like in a video game and on paper, like it looks.
Yeah, it looked really good on paper and didn't necessarily play out that way.
It's kind of like his attitude and like. The way he was, it's shocking that he's back on they let him back on the Lakers at this point. But that was kind of like the beginning of like, okay, Dwight's not that dude. And he had a good year in Houston after, but then every year, he's kind of dipped a little bit since then, statistically.
Oh yeah, yes, the guy can still put up like a double-double in his sleep on most teams in the league. He hasn't necessarily like been the most welcome addition lately. He took a real turn this year where he's like actually playing good minutes on like a good team.
Yeah.
Like he's not like, I wouldn't say he's crucial to their like team success or anything like that, but he's playing a good role. And you play with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and it's bound to happen. But he still looks good. He wins Defensive Player of the Year 3 years in a row, from 2009 to 2011. And he yeah, he's just was an absolute defensive like anchor. One of the best rebounders in the league and has been excellent there. Great around the basket. Like the guy was just so hard to stop. I think one stat with Dwight is he never averages more than 13.5 field goals per game, which is kind of a wonder. You just would have liked him to become that. I think the thing I remember watching Dwight Howard is he goes and works out with Hakeem Olajuwon, and you see like the footwork, and you see how much quicker Hakeem Olajuwon, who is like in his mid 40s, if not like close to 50 at this point,
Hakeem could
moves
still
around
in a half-court scenario.
Yeah, like Hakeem has this like beautiful footwork and is spinning like so fast as soon as he gets the ball, and Dwight takes a while. So Dwight was never necessarily like the most agile, but very agile for his size and super strong. Like leads the league in dunks a number of seasons. The crazy athlete, and the dunk contests. Say what you will about the whole personality and like his ability to actually give a fuck when he plays.
And also he's like
in like serious situations, you almost wish there was like a little bit more fight in Dwight at times, but still like he's a competitor, and he you look at this draft and he's still the guy that you would take number one.
Yeah, I mean, this was when I graduated high school, so I was technically could have been available, but
yeah,
if you had to pass on me, you would go with probably Dwight.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. I didn't do the paperwork. It was the whole thing.
Yeah. I think
but yeah, Dwight Howard, good player. Like the more you learn about him, the more you dislike him off the court because he's nut.
Let's go in. Come on.
He's an anti-vaxxer, and he had some fairly strong religious opinions that I strongly disagree with.
That again.
And so it's like, but
he was also talking about masks and his not believing in those. Correct? Yeah. Dwight Howard, not my favorite.
Yeah, like I don't think we'd ever be friends. But like from a basketball perspective, like he's okay on the court. But let's move on. Let's get past Dwight because that's a tier. And now we're gonna zoom. We're gonna pretend you're on an airplane. You're flying super, super high, as high as you can. You reach the atmosphere. You go out of the atmosphere. You keep going, and then that's where
we need like NASA to get it.
Yeah,
you need a rocket ship between this.
Going a little bit further. This is our number one player. So this is the 2003 NBA draft.
Yeah, I looked through the top 74 players that ESPN had come out with, and neither Dwight nor Blake were on that list. This particular player was ranked number 2.
And this is a really strong draft. I mean, even up at the top, condensed, it's pretty strong. I mean, Carmelo Anthony comes out.
The top is really strong. Yeah.
Carmelo Anthony comes out, as a freshman, leads Syracuse to a championship. This Dwayne Wade guy that we hadn't really
Final Four
a lot about. He starts coming in the tournament, and you're like, who the hell is this guy? You have Chris Bosh.
You have this guy who's amazing at mid-range shooting, and
Chris Bosh, this big guy, and then this other guy that they've been talking about for years from high school, and he's been on the cover of Slam. He's been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. LeBron James.
Yeah. And let's also be real here. There was never a question of who was going to.
Oh, no question at all.
I know you're not even saying that, but we're giving out context here. This was the LeBron James draft. And when Cleveland wins the lottery, Gordon Gunn, who owned the team at the time and was blind, knew who they were taking number 1. Well, we're not so sure we're taking number 1, and everybody had a good laugh because they knew it was LeBron. And LeBron is playing pretty close by in Akron.
He's a high school kid who's driving a Hummer, age 3.
Yeah, as he should.
He's on the cover of all the magazines. His games, it's the first time.
He's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, I believe, as a sophomore.
And games are on ESPN.
Like a rising junior, going in there.
Adidas has given him custom shoes when he's in high school. He's got the King James on his mouth guard. But you look at this guy's body and you put him next to 99% of the NBA, and you're like, he already fit in, as a high school kid.
Yeah, he was. I remember there's a clip where they're I believe at ABCD camp, and Rick Pitino is talking to him. He's like, yeah, there's a guy here who's like going into his junior year and like would be like the number one pick in the draft. Like looks like a franchise player. And everybody knows who he's talking about. LeBron was just out of this world. He has this matchup against Lenny Cook in ABCD where Lenny is the number one player in the high school class of 2002. LeBron was the number one player in the high school class of 2003. Lenny is legit, like I think 2.5 years older than LeBron, and LeBron obliterates him. I think he outscores him 24-9, and he banks in the game-winning three-pointer. The legend of LeBron only went from there. I remember also in Slam magazine when they would give out the All-American teams, LeBron was the only freshman to be an honorable mention, and then I think the last 3 years he was on the first team. He had a tremendous high school career at St. Vincent St. Mary, and was like a constant fixture on ESPN. The first time I had a chance to watch him play was in the McDonald's All-American game, and just was an absolute man among boys.
Oh, that dunk contest, and that's why he'll never do a dunk contest again.
I watched the dunk contest before, but actually seen him play.
Above the rim.
Yeah.
Like his whole.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah, he wasn't necessarily like the most creative dunker, but he just got so high,
and put
so
it down.
powerful. The excitement was there.
Just kind of like LeBron's signature dunk where he kind of cocks it back. Like that's it. He doesn't need to do anything fancy.
Yeah, sure. And he's more of an in-game dunker anyway, as we've seen. And I still say the best in-game dunk I've ever seen was LeBron on Yusuf Nurkic a couple years ago. He's lived up to everything. People may want his finals record to be a little bit different, and he certainly had a couple series where you could say he could have done better. But he has also had many series where you're like, what more could this guy do?
Yeah. No, there's a couple, especially his first run in Cleveland, where you're like, what else could this he can't.
The two series you can point out. Boston, his last year, the first go around in Cleveland, he had a rough series.
Yeah.
And then his first NBA Finals with Miami against Dallas, he does not play up to his usual line, albeit Dallas defended that like exceptionally well, and he was making like, I think he upped his assists certainly from the season and was making the right play quite often, but did he go like all kill mode LeBron like you would expect? Of course not. From then on, he's been pretty good.
He's pretty good. I mean, and he did bring a championship to Cleveland. Obviously, in a weird, the
best NBA Finals I think I've ever seen.
The way I look at it is like, yeah, LeBron went to Miami, he went to college, and then he allowed, Cleveland to make this almost trade unofficially to get, Kyrie, and like for him to like loop back, and it's like, oh, you got Kyrie now? Oh, that's cool. I'll come in here and, swap Wiggins.
I think initially, like, I'm guessing when he went to Miami, he was probably expecting to stay there.
I'm guessing, but then it kind of made some sense. It's like, oh, Cleveland's actually.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they had young pieces and they could get him a third star. And I think he kind of saw what was happening in Miami and the difficulties they were having there with the cap situation. And I think, may have wanted that change of scenery. It's never been boring. That's one thing we'll say with LeBron James' career. It hasn't been boring. It's been a story full of twists and turns and some incredible individual performances, some incredible team performances.
And he's still with a few more years to be that dude.
Yeah. Like his I'd say like the one player that you can mention who has had like close to his amount of success with having the longevity that he's had is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like they look like they're indestructible.
Yeah, like relatively like LeBron.
You certainly hope he has a few more years left. Father time never loses. But LeBron, like at this point, what he's doing this year as a 35-year-old, and will certainly, I think he's going to get some first place votes for MVP. I still think it's going to Giannis, as it should.
Well, you mentioned that Lenny Cook documentary, and there's a funny scene in that documentary, which I highly recommend if you're a basketball fan. But also it's great because you see that this Lenny Cook versus LeBron. Lenny Cook goes downward, LeBron goes upward. But they're saying, showing all these TV clips for the camp, and LeBron says, like, I'm not trying to be Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. I'm trying to be LeBron James.
Yeah.
Really, and he got to do it. A lot of people can say those things when they're in high school and they're coming up like, oh, I'm going to be the greatest. It's like, no, this guy actually did it.
Yeah. And honestly, like, at the time, I didn't have a huge record of seeing prospects, and probably I think the first big high school prospect I ever got to see live was DeMar Johnson, who played with Kareem Butler at Maine Central Institute. I was living in Toronto at the time, and they came to a tournament there. They played David West, actually, in the finals. He was with Harvard Military Academy. So I didn't have like a huge list of prospects I had seen really out of high school. But yeah, LeBron looked like the best to me, and I still don't think there's been a prospect like him even since. He was generational, and yeah, like it at the time. Michael Jordan had just retired his second time with the Washington Wizards. LeBron was chasing him. Like guys like Giannis, Luka Doncic, Zion Williamson, they're chasing LeBron.
Yeah.
And,
well, he's one of those guys. His career started like he just came out of the gates. He was one of the, he was a force in this league. Period.
At the time, I think the best. Well, it was bar none the best season by any prep to pro guy.
And he wasn't a great three-point shooter, and he's improved.
And then that next year, he's like one of the. He's at least in the voting for MVP and stays there forever.
Yeah, scoring ability, court vision, like LeBron has got it.
Yeah, the one knock on him was his shooting, and I think he's at least improved there, and has made it respectable. One of the best finishers in NBA history, and one of the best, if not the best passer in NBA history, leading the league in assists this year, has been just an incredible driver of offenses. I know he takes some plays off defensively every once in a while in the regular season.
Don't we all?
Yeah, he has had some great moments there as well. Let's be real.
Totally. That chase down block, like that is
his defense on Derrick Rose in 2010-11.
Oh yeah, that was also pretty.
When they go to the NBA Finals, and yeah, it's had many great defensive moments as well. The block on Thiago Splitter, jeez. that was 2012-13 LeBron, maybe his best individual season, by the way, and he was just at like an insane height that season.
Totally. Like
his last MVP thus far. Will he ever win again? Who knows? Probably not. But he's at least in the conversation. Is by far. If we were to project either of these lists, it's hard for me to think that Zion Williamson is going to have a better career than LeBron James. But
we wish him well. But yeah, it's difficult.
Then also let's if we're comparing 2000 to 2009 to 2010, 2019 on depth. You go with 2010, 2019. But 2000 to 2009 has LeBron James.
Yeah. If you put him on the court, it's gonna be a game regardless. Like I don't know. It's interesting. Like there's definitely some names, that we went over today on that list that we could place other than LeBron. LeBron stays. If anyone thinks LeBron shouldn't be number one, don't comment because you don't deserve it.
Oh yeah. Come on.
But let's
be real here, people.
Yeah, there's other names you could flip and flop, like Kenyon Martin for Bogut, or even Blake or Derrick Rose, for Dwight, or however you kind of feel that is. But yeah, like undisputed, the greatest player of my lifetime, in the sense of I saw him from rookie to to fruition, and I could say that for I guess Kobe. I saw Kobe's whole career too, but I kind of take LeBron over Kobe if I had to. I know it's to
me, and this is just my opinion, I don't think it's a question.
Yeah.
I think LeBron is definitely had a better career than Kobe Bryant. You can say Kobe's won the 5 rings, but LeBron, I just think when you talk about totals and impacts and like, yeah, to me it's LeBron James.
Yeah, like so. That's another debate.
Yeah.
But, like it's like
To me, not a debate, but
I know it's tough. I mean,
to many it is. To many it is.
it can be, but so that was our list. Those are our 10 guys from that, ranking the number 1 picks from 2000 to 2009. Let us know if you have any different opinions, minus LeBron James, because if you do, again, don't comment. You do not deserve
We're begging you not to. No,
please don't. But
comment, but you better bring it.
yeah, like you better bring some very good statistical evidence that, like, Dwight Howard is really better than LeBron because he averages more fouls per minute or something that you think is an important stat that's not.
Yeah.
Because there's no way. But like, yeah, a lot of the other guys kind of, fit in these different tiers and you can kind of move and interplace them. Like, I think, it is possible for Blake to get at a better level than Dwight in a couple, depending, but like Detroit's probably maybe not going places right now. So, that kind of stunts Blake, but
yeah, I can see like if Blake really turns it around, like I could see the argument of him over Dwight Howard. Like,
yeah,
that was something I honestly thought about, but I just think Dwight has.
I think Dwight has the resume. Blake's
defensive nature. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming out to listen or view Viseland this week. I'm Michael Visenberg. You can follow me on Twitter at NBA Draft Mikey V. He's Jason Visenberg. You can follow him on Twitter at J Visenberg. If you follow the podcast on Twitter at Viseland, you will see that I was a guest on the Prep to Pro pod with Ben Pfeiffer and Max Carlin. We had a great time. We talked top 3 superlatives of the 2020 NBA draft. Those guys are doing a fantastic job. So follow them at Prep #2 Pro. Yeah. And yeah, I had a great time doing that. It was a list I used to do when I wrote for NBADraft.net. Please like, subscribe, follow. We really appreciate all the love. We're trying to get great content for you. If you have anything you'd like us to talk about, please shoot. But we've had a great time giving some historical context and making these lists for you guys.
And then viselandpod@gmail.com. You can always drop us an email. Check us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We are here, and we will see you next Wednesday, 9 o'clock. Have a good one, everybody.